Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. This is Joe, the bearded historian. He'll tell you an interesting story. Be careful of his soldiers, they can be brats. This is Angel, she's an entity. She'll cause chaos and plant her hands at you. This is Sue, she likes spirits, not the alcohol. She's the reason this channel exists. This is David, he likes fire trucks. He's here occasionally. Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. We preserve his story.
Good morning. It's Monday, and we've got part 1 of our second cemetery walk. This one was held in North Dakota, and we start with the history, and then we see the cemeteries. So hopefully you guys will enjoy that. We've got a zombie race. Should I wait until Friday to do that? Okay, I changed my mind. We're going to do a duck race. Are you ready? Here we go. Okay. There we go. And there's She Stole. There's Melinda. There's Griselda. There's Ron. And Travis. Strong Mind. Sea Tripping. Peaches. Glitter. Pin. Carnival. Crazy Train. Laura. Dave's Adventures. Vi. There's Ian. There's Mountain Inspiration. There's Popcorn. There's Jacob. There's Hillbillies. Brick Girls and Lower. Let's see. There's Ron Gaming. Let's see here. There's Mike's Garden. Jocelyn and Sophia. And Tay Eats. And Woonsey. And it's going to be Mr. Moonsey. Hold on a minute. Okay. This is a Moonsey channel. Abandoned and dead real estate cruises. Dead cruises? Restaurants and other fun content. So here's an airport. Here's Kmart. He's got a lot of abandoned Kmarts. I would love to explore. Here's a Sears. We don't have Sears here anymore. It's been turned into like a trade place. So he's got all of those. He always includes a bit of history. This is one of our Johns. And he doesn't have any lies, but that's okay. His videos are very cool. Now there's one of the carnivals and the cruises. So yeah, check into cruising, abandoned places, tiny bits of history. Like, share, comment, and enjoy North Dakota history and family. Theologically? Yeah, words.
Can you hear her? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. First of all, I have an assignment for all of you with phones. Could you please view in the whole county, which about 21 is that we have a number for. And so we decided to divide the county up. We focused it on the western half. And so there are 10 cemeteries that we are going to cover today. We will actually physically do a tour of 4 of them. And they will be on the bus tour. And they are Richland, Haven of Rest, Highland Prairie, and Whetstone Butte. And the other 6 will be just a tour here on virtually. And also the 4 on top will be included too with the virtual tour. But we will do Bucyrus, Emmanuel, Monry, North Grand, Rose Hill, and Wolf Butte. And so first of all, we'll start out with cemeteries I like if you have someone that passes away at your home. And so it tells you that if they wear false teeth, to put them in right away so that the jaw doesn't set. Then you are to put a pad under their chin and then tie a kerchief up over their head to keep the mouth closed and to keep everything in place and to make sure they look natural. Then you are to put a weight on their eyelids, and that could be a penny or whatever, but just to keep the eyes closed. And then from there, place the arms either across the chest or along down the side of the body, and position the legs. But through this whole process, when they're talking about it, they said to not call the undertaker right away, to wait. The reasoning being is that you want to make sure that your loved one is dead. They said a lot of times it wasn't unusual for people to be buried alive, and so they said just to wait as long as you could and then call the undertaker to come get the body. There were 5 undertakers in Michael Manigan. He was paid by the county, and they charged $16.50 for a burial outfit, $4 in advance to dig the grave, and $2 livery hire taking the corpse to the cemetery. Herman Kern was the next undertaker for this area. He was a World War I veteran, but what we found was really interesting was that he had a female assistant, that she would, there was no extra charge for the services of the lady embalmer or for the miles traveled to and from places of call. This is Herman Kern's funeral home, and these photos came from Charles E. Bott, and he sent them to Lyle Walby in 1993. So it's a pretty elegant looking building, I would say.
Still there.
Still there? Where is it at?
The Jensen House.
That's a Jensen house. Okay, okay. T.G. Barclay, he started in November of 1944. He was married, had 2 children. He was active in the community. And what I found most interesting was that T.G. Barclay and Dorwin Howe were buddies. And they would go golfing every Sunday morning, and Isabel and the kids would go to church. A cemetery is hallowed ground that connects the living with the dead. And I forgot to tell you that we have different facilitators for each church. So Richland will be Jean Pagel. Christie will be Whetstone, and she will be Haven of Rest. And she will also do Rose Hill Cemetery in Reeder. Lauren Luco will do Emmanuel, and I am Sherry Wick, and I'm stuck with the rest. So Jean's up.
Can you hear her? Or say something, Jean.
Hello.
It's okay. Okay.
Okay. This shows the Richland Lutheran churches, and 3 acres of land were obtained from the Hawk and Fred in 1916 for construction of the new church, and the first service was in 1917. 10 years later, the church building was dedicated when the basement was complete. In 1933, lightning struck the church and burned it down. The church was located near the cemetery site. And there was a note that Henrietta Fordall told me that when the lightning struck that church, there was Bible school kids at the Wolfview Church, and they saw that lightning strike that church and started on fire. And then this is our present church. The new church was built in a more central location. It was dedicated in 1950. Yeah. Okay. This is the entrance to the cemetery.
Cool.
Several of the charter members came from Richland County in North Dakota, so it was dedicated to give the church that name. And that gate there, it was in honor of, in memory of Norval Fordall. Okay, this is Hannah Fordall, and she was, she was married to A.J. Fordall, and she came to Adams County in 1910. They had 5 boys and 5 girls. And AJ, she died at age 63 in 1930 of pneumonia. AJ remarried and died before the second wife. She had him buried in Hettinger Cemetery. So he remains in Hettinger Cemetery and she remains up there. They wanted to move his body with her, but 'cause she went out to California, and then I guess his brother was eventually buried next to him there. So, let's see, Joseph Goppel, and we don't know much about him, but he was a grandpa to Joan and Cindy Stenberg. They, Norma, their mom married Lloyd Erickson. Cemetery should be more places stones lie on the ground. Cemeteries hold the stories of people who have lived in the past, people who have shaped our past. Okay, the Kwame Cemetery, that was a marker that Leonard Kwame had put there to mark where his plot was. And now there's Charlotte Kwame is also up there, so there's the folks and Herbert Kwame is the son, and Ernest Kwame. Robert Underland, there's 11 Underlands in the cemetery, and that includes 5 of his siblings, 3 brothers, and then there's a sister and parents and uncle. Not here. Okay, there's the Peterson family. If anybody knows who they are, we don't know exactly who they go with, but it's there. You can see what the dates are. If anybody knows what their family is, we aren't aware of. And then here's Rodney Novak. He died of COVID in 21, and he was a member of that Richland, and he just wanted to be buried where there was peace and quiet. And Sheila, his wife, is here with us here. Hilda Christensen, that's grandparents of we think about some of the Christensens. So, okay. Thank you.
Take your microphone.
Nope. I'll do the same thing you did.
All right, my name is Christy Hagen Miller, so I grew up north of Reeder. And about Haven of Rest, it's a little known cemetery that's 12 miles north of Reeder near my family farm. It's a Jehovah's Witness cemetery, and there are about 12 people buried there. This is my great uncle Alfred Hagen. In the 1940s, he donated some land where there could be a kingdom cemetery, and I believe that he took, the story I was told is that he took a store from Reeder and moved it out there. And I found this old picture of Reeder, and this looks a lot like that. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where it came from, and there's no one around who knows what that store was in Reeder. So I'm without a clue. So in the 1960s, a Kingdom Hall was built in Reeder, so this was no longer needed. And my dad took advantage of the fact that it was empty to move it to his farm for a bunkhouse in a storeroom. So that was moved to our farmstead just a mile from the current site. And in that Kingdom Hall was this great big piano from the late 1800s. It's like a grand piano. I took piano lessons on it in the day. I don't know where it went. I thought it went to the Monmouth Museum, but they say they don't have it. My great uncle Alfred that you saw on the last slide was a zealous evangelist, and he converted his mother to the Jehovah's Witness faith in her later years. So she's buried in the corner there. Her name was Wilhelmina Hagen. They called her Minnie. And she was a midwife, and she delivered many babies in that Cedar Creek area. Here are a few other people that are buried out here. On the left side are Ed and Teresa Frederick. He was born in Minnesota, and she was born in Germany. They lived in 1920 in Slope County, And in Ed's later years, he worked for Earl Hagen out on the farm north of Reeder. And the Jehovah's Witnesses claim that he had some healing gift. So people would go to him and he was like a chiropractor, old-time chiropractor. The three people in the middle are the Dubazars, and they hailed from New England. So Raymond and Rosemary and Mildred were all siblings. Mildred married Arthur, and they lived to the north, up in the North Country by our farm. And then the two on the far end, I included those because they're kind of recent burials there. The top girl is from Dickinson, and she was friends to the Dubazars. And Jerry, do I say Gurman? He's from Bowman. And I called the Kingdom Hall in Dickinson to see why people would want to be buried in this little country cemetery that nobody even doesn't tend much. But he said that the land was dedicated to the Jehovah's Witnesses, and these people wanted to be buried with others that shared their faith. So 6 miles down the road on Old Highway 22 is the Whetstone Butte Cemetery. No church was associated with this cemetery. The worshipers held services at the Whetstone Schoolhouse, which is 2 miles north of the Whetstone Butte. My association with this is there's a lot of my relatives buried here. So I'm just going to give you a little profile of them. This is Carl Hagen, and he and his brother Pete, would be Earl Hagen's dad, were handsome and enterprising and ambitious. Carl and Pete had a restaurant in London, and then they had a hotel in Reeder Hotel, and that was named for the township they came from in Minnesota. And Carl married Mabel Johnson, and the Johnsons had a lot of kids. So in the next slide, you're gonna hear more about the Johnsons. But Carl, like so many, died with this of the Spanish flu, and his two young daughters did too. This is an ad from the Western Call, the Hotel Irving, and that's Carl on the left and Pete Hagen on the right. I'm proud of these guys. They made something out of nothing. And then Carl and Pete's family is also there. I just talked to my cousin Bruce this morning, and that headstone had a Tootsie Roll cylinder on top of it, but lightning struck it and then it was gone. So they didn't replace that. But this is my great-grandpa, John, and he was married to the lady up in Haven of Rest. And then these are Carl's brothers. That's Willie and Anna on the top. And then the cute little boy there is named, what's his name? Elmer. And I have a story to tell you about Elmer. My dad was born in the year that he died. So my dad was named Rex, and they changed his name to Elmer. So Elmer Hagen was my dad. Okay, here's some more pictures from Whetstone. The top picture is of Phil and Minnie Monroe. I guess Minnie was a popular name in those days. But Phil was born in Canada and Minnie was born in Norway, and that's a great picture of them on the left side from their great-granddaughter. And then on the right side is Inga Christensen. She was married in 1915, and that's her on the left in the picture next to the headstone. And she had a stillborn baby, and I was able to find the death certificate for that baby, and my great-grandma was there at the death. The bottom row are all related to the Johnsons. Remember, Carl Hagen's wife was a Johnson. So on the right side, that's a baby. We see lots of babies in these cemeteries. And then Amund Haugen, if you knew Orville Haugen, he ran the Farmers Union Station in Reeder. That's his dad. He was a brother-in-law to Carl. And then this guy, Gilbert, was also a brother-in-law to Carl. And I found an article about how he died. And he was hunting rabbits, and he crawled through the fence. and his shotgun discharged, and that was his last day.
Ouch.
Ouch, for sure. Okay.
You need to message him when you get him money. Okay.
Okay, the next cemetery is a Highland Prairie, and this cemetery is located north and west of Hettinger, and it's just out in the middle of nowhere. The property, my brother bought the land, and with it came the cemetery, so he turned around and he put a fence around it, and he was telling me about it. And so at that point in time, this was the late 90s, so I had a 4-H group, and so we decided to take on a community project. And took the kids out there, we did a lot of mowing. We talked to Donnie Davidson, he gave us, he let us use a tiller and a tractor, and we tilled up for trees, which we got 25 trees from the Soil Conservation District for free, and we planted all the trees there. We took care of that cemetery, I believe, for probably 3 years, and then it was more me pushing the kids, and so I decided to worship. So anyway, but Highland Prairie is believed to be the precursor of the Manual Lutheran Cemetery. The reason being is that they used to call it the Old Emmanuel Cemetery, and the Manual Norwegian Lutheran Church and Cemetery, that was organized in August of 1907, but the construction for the church was never started until 1923. So all of the graves that are at Highland Prairie or Old Emmanuel are from 1907 to 1913. So, okay. This is an interesting story. This is Daniel Fugelstein, and the little headstone over on the side, when we first seen it, there's 2 names on there. And we thought, oh, it's twins that died as babies. But as we started digging, we found out that they were brothers that died from the flu. And anyway, Daniel and his wife, they had Bardines, he was age 6, and Anton, age 3. And anyway, the story that I received from Ann Fugelstein, which she was related to them, she said that her cousin relayed the story that her father had encountered Daniel driving his wagon to town. And when asked what the purpose of his trip was, his simple answer was to buy another coffin. So this was after the second boy passed away. 10 weeks later, after the children's death, Mrs. Fugelstein delivered another baby, and it was a little boy. And so they named the baby Anton Bardines. And so the names carried on, and the memory of the little boys did. This is some more individuals, and Ole and Carrie Kittleson-Rue. Carrie was one of the founders of the Emmanuel Norwegian Lutheran Church, and both her and her husband are buried at the cemetery, Highland Prairie. The little girl, Karina Olsen, is their granddaughter. She is also buried there. And Ole and Ellen Rue Berg, I'm not totally, she's related to the Rues. She's their daughter. And then Carrie is, Palmer is a cousin to the kids, and he died from typhoid, and he is also buried there. There's a lot of markers out at Highland Prairie that they're metal, and they're very tough because they don't show anywhere. They've been there since 1916, some earlier than that, but they are resilient. Gladys Alton Fossum, she was a little baby, and like Christy said, we found a lot of babies in the cemeteries and stuff. And then the children of Osmond and Marie Olson are also buried there at Highland Prairie.
So Rose Hill is the name of the cemetery just outside Reeder. And I grew up going to funerals at this cemetery, and I never did notice the scissors up on the sign. So I asked, and it was the Byers brand. And the blacksmith who made that sign was Tex Byers. So I guess he took liberties and just put his brand up on the reader sign. I also didn't know what happened to this guy. This is the most stately headstone out at Rose Hill. It's got a wrought iron fence around it, and I never did inquire until lately. So this is Emil Peel. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And in front of him are his grandsons. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Emil. So he was born in Germany in 1967, and he married Minnie in Iowa in 1998, another Minnie. And in 1910, the freight train set fire, and he took his team of 5 horses and went and tried to break some ground to stop the spread. But he was unsuccessful, and he was badly burned. He lived for 2 days, but then he died. And he left his wife and 3 children. And eventually the wife would marry another widower. You can see on the right, the ones in the red are the Peels. And the guy way on the right, his name's Arnold, and those are the babies, or the young boys that are buried right in front of Emil. Another salient feature about Rose Hill Cemetery is the number of World War I veterans. So I was able to find a few pictures to enhance this slide. The top one's Carl Bow and his brother Martin Bow and Clarence Tweet. These are all reader people that we remember fondly. And then on the right are other World War I veterans' graves. So Frank Hof, Oscar Olson, George Deering, I can't even say that bottom one, Alfred Tweet and Alvin Olson. We honor their service. And then also at Rose Hill, I just put a few headstones here that were unique, and I might recognize the name. Frank Congi, I didn't know, I couldn't find anything about him, but he's got a nice, elegant headstone. And the next one is Bob Pagel's grandparents, right, Bob? Great-grandparents. Okay, Ida and Charles Pagel. The last one on the right, top right, are the Goldens. And I found a little quote about William. It said he was interested somewhat in politics. That's good enough these days. And the bottom one, lots of these cemeteries have these cement headstones that have been embedded with petrified wood and agates and a lot of pink stones. So I just added that. Matt Coltis, he was a bachelor and a farmer. That's all I know about him. And then the Tigans, that's a familiar name and reader. Christina and Eric, they lived in this area for 14 years. And I read a quote that Christina, when she first came to this country, she didn't see another woman for 6 months.
Oh my.
You can see why they lost their minds, some of these ladies. And then Hayden and Elizabeth Stevens are next. And Hayden was said to be a good storyteller and raise pigs for a living. And Lionel Mellon, he died in a reservoir in 1920 at a very young age.
Next is Wolf Butte Cemetery, and this was cemetery and the church were organized in 1913, and Abjor Harverson, he donated the land for the church and the cemetery. Cemetery lots were sold for $5, and that was to provide a fence and upkeep of the grounds. The first funeral was for an infant child of Mr. and Mrs. John, Score. This is a picture of the church. It's still existing, and the church was completed in 1924. Her brand, Broughton, he came from Norway, and he homesteaded in Darling Springs Township. He homesteaded next to his brother, Canute. The brothers played violin at dances, and they were charter members of the Wolf Butte Church. Canute lived with Knut and Ruth and their 3 children allowed her Brand to live with them, so they're one happy family. But anyway, her Brand passed away, and the youngest child of Knut and his wife was only 3 days old. And so their son, his name was Alvin, and so they gave Alvin the middle name of her Brand. Louis Ole Richardson, he was a blacksmith and a farmer, and he came from Minnesota. He was a charter member of the Wolf Butte Church, and he married Anna Gorder Richardson, and she was from Norway. And they together had 9 children. And Louis was a member of the North Dakota House of Representatives for 4 years, from 1924 to 1928. He also served on township boards as well as church offices. He was a justice of the peace, treasurer of the Wolf Butte School, and he was postmaster of the Wolf Butte Post Office from 1908 to 1916. Only after reading about Mr. Richardson did I find that there was actually a town called Wolf Butte, and it housed the post office and I think a little store. But it started out in the southern part of the section where they homesteaded and ended up in the northern part. Why they moved it, I have no clue.
Because they can.
I thought that was kind of interesting. Wolf Butte Cemetery has very beautiful headstones. This for Joyce Evelyn Clark. She was only a year old. It's metal, but it's a beautiful headstone. It's been there since 1926, and you can't see anywhere or anything on it. This headstone is Ingrid Helmut Nordahl, and if anyone remembers Bill Nordahl, that was his sister. She was only 17 years old when she passed, and she got influenza. But what we found was really unique was the beautiful headstone, and then embedded in it is her picture. And that picture looks like it was taken yesterday. It is just so brilliant and sharp. She's a beautiful young girl. Osiris Cemetery is located just south of Osiris. And this headstone, all background the family first. It was Sam Opine, and his wife's name was Ingeborg. And Sam Opine left home at 17, and he traveled around to different places. He ended up in 1906, he decided that he was going to move to Dakota Territory. So he came to Dickinson, and he found a homestead land locator. And this gentleman found him land in Holden Township. Now, like I said, Sam was a little bit established, so he had 3 horses, he had some small machinery, he had household goods, and he purchased lumber in Dickinson. He then traveled the 65 miles from Dickinson to his homestead, and he took his walking plow, and he peeled off the sod, put that in the wagon, and started building his sod house. In 1907, his wife joined him with their son, Oscar. And after they got there, then they built a barn and a chicken coop. And Sam was a futuristic because so many of around him did not have horses. They had nothing to assist them. So they were coming to Sam and asking to borrow his horses and everything. So he started raising horses. He ended up with 60 head of horses, which he in turn sold to all the homesteaders. He also had cattle that he raised. His son, Alfred, was the first white child born in Holden Township. And Sam was the township justice of the peace, the township supervisor, and the road overseer. He and his wife, late in 1911, had a little girl. Her name was Gladys. And anyway, Gladys lived for 2 years, and she caught influenza, and she died. But what's unique about her headstone is on the top, it looks like a Bible. A lot of the headstones that we see had images of what they felt heaven should look like. the pearly gates, the angels, everything. This one had it was really, really faded from time and erosion and everything. But Christy and Lane, they went at it and they threw dirt on it and were able to pick up the image of what the letters said. And it says, "A little one from us is gone, a voice on earth is still, a place is vacant in our home that never can be filled." And that was the last child that Sam and his wife had. Bucyrus was the scene of the first tornado, I believe, in the area. Olaf Lundahl, he was born in Sweden, and he ended up in Peoria, Illinois. He married Anne Sophia Larson, and they moved to Bucyrus area. They were there for 6 years, and then he was killed in the tornado. The tornado went through on June 24th. These are pictures of his farmstead that basically were leveled. There were 7 Adams County residents that died in the tornado, and 20 were injured. The storm originated 5 miles south of Scranton, and they figured the property loss was $150,000. Well, let's see, I had that, it went through the Stedgy place, the Spencer place, and the George Lewis place. Ole, he was born in Norway in 1882, and he was the pastor for Bucyrus Lutheran Parish from 1947 to 1959 at the North Grand, Wolf Butte, Richland, and Bucyrus churches. And Margie Oy and Barb Rose can attest to how stern he was, because he was their confirmation teacher. And one of his sayings that he said was that a church surrounded by a cemetery reminds me of a hen with her chicks.
Interesting.
Also at the Bucyrus Cemetery is Carol Spooner. And Carol Spooner was a WAC, W-A-C. She was a women's army. She was in the Women's Army Corps, and she was assigned to intelligence service at the Pentagon. Carol was also a teacher and reader, and a great lady, super. Another one that I picked, well, the Latson here in the corner. They were a poor family. I believe the man worked in the mines, I think. But they didn't have much money. So when family members died, they couldn't afford a headstone. It was expensive. So they got creative. They took bricks and lined the bricks up, one on top of the other. And then over time, because I did hear that it was really ugly when they first started. But anyway, they covered the bricks with concrete. And I think it looks really neat. I mean, it took a lot of creativity. Up in the corner is a pharaoh, and you can see there that it's like they poured a square of concrete and then wrote the name and the birth and the death date on. And that's the way it is at the Latson marker. There's a lot of the same style of where they created their own. Another one is Strikers, Charles, Lily, and Irma Stryker. Charles Stryker, if any of you know the big red barn that's north of Bucyrus, just a few miles, that is where Charles Stryker homesteaded. And Charles Stryker, he was a lumberjack, and he was a construction worker, and he was the youngest of 14 children. And he took off and homesteaded, like I said, north of Bucyrus, April of 1907. He was a very avid farmer who liked to try new practices, and he was good at it. He had a friend who also homesteaded out that way, and when they were working on their homesteads, they seen the railroad guys come through. Well, they were going to start laying track, and so they thought, shoot, this is good, we can make some money. So they went and laid track during the day and then worked at night. And they earned enough money so that Charles could turn around and plant 70-some acres of flax on their property the next season. Like I said, Charles was good. He was a carpenter, And so he was active in the community. I should say that he was married too. But anyway, he was very active in the community. He helped to build the Bucyrus Lutheran Church, and that was in 1910, and also the Bucyrus School in 1916. His wife Lily, whom he had 7 children with, and as you see in the corner they list Ernest Stryker. He died as a young boy, and then she had the last child was stillborn. But his wife Lily, she died from a stroke, and so then Charles turned around and married Irma Arneson. And I thought he was a brave man to put a wife on either side of him. But anyway, the tornado that went through June 24th, it did go through Charles Stryker's farm also, but did no damage and stuff. So he was really instrumental in helping them, his neighbors, out. Margie?
Yes, ma'am.
You're up.
I'm up. Never up. If I can get up, that's the church.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Thanks a lot, Sherry. North Grand Cemetery is, well, it's actually located on the quarter section that my grandfather Holden homesteaded on. It's in the corner, and the church was active from, when did it close? Probably 1960s. And everything was done there. Church suppers, dinners, so many things. Any 1909, here we got the home of Manville Olson. Later a sod house was used as a church and school. I remember my mother talking about church was held in many of the homesteaders' homes around the area until the building was actually built. After that, there were, as I said, all kinds of everything went on at the church if there was some place to have something. I can't really remember anything in particular about that church. There are the graves there. The oldest one that I located was 1909, and that was a Hathaway, a name that's familiar to me from my mother's stories about the area. There are several Fadnesses there, Holden, Hanson, Steen. The latest grave was my mother, Darlene, in 2003. I counted 29 graves there in all. The church and area, if anybody wants to visit themselves down there, be aware it has cactus.
Ooh, yay, yay.
All over the place, so be careful. My grandparents, my grandfather Holden came in 1906, I believe, to Homestead there. His wife came, or to-be wife, came later and homesteaded a quarter of land of her own to the northwest of the home quarter, or what I refer to as the home quarter. And eventually they were married. They had 3 daughters. The oldest, my mother, Darlene, and then 2 others, Ruth and Verna. All 3 of them became school teachers, and I can remember as a child coming home from school while Grandpa was still alive. He would usually be in his office, and his call to me was, "Margie, come here and tell me what you learned today." His education was pretty much self-educated, but he valued education very much. I didn't know until now, I guess, or these later years, how much I missed that guy. That's my story.
Thank you.
Okay, the next cemetery up on is Momry. And this is located south of Raider. It's pretty close to the Bowman, Adams County line. It's a really cool cemetery because you kind of got to go off the beaten path to find it. It was first organized in 1908 and it closed in 1972. It was built in 1916 and then it closed in 72. The church building was sold and then it was moved. And I think the altar is here at the museum if you want to take a look and stuff. But the cemetery is really unique in that the big sign, the bell, the church cross and everything. This is a unique headstone, kind of like portraying what heaven would look like. And this is for Mikkel Swenson. Mikkel was born in Norway in 1875 and immigrated to the United States in 1905. His first home in our area was a sod shanty, and he married Margette Rue, and they had, she had 2 children that died in infancy. And then after his wife died, then he married Elaine Hansen Nierum in Norway. And I believe he went to Norway to find his second wife. This is Gertie Davidson, Gertie Boll Davidson, and she was born in Norway in 1876. She came to Harvey, North Dakota with her brothers and had her own homestead in Adams County. And one thing that I thought was very interesting was that there was homesteader rules. And you were a homesteader as a husband and wife, you could only file 1 claim. But if not married, the man could file and so could the woman. And once paperwork was completed, then they could marry. So Gertie, she was down the road, was it a couple miles? Yep, 2 miles west. And there was David Davidson. And he was had a teaching degree from UND in Grand Forks. He taught, and then he decided he wanted to homestead in southwest North Dakota. And anyway, his homestead was 2 miles away from Gertie, and the sparks flew, and they got married. So David was active in the community as a township treasurer with the Farmers Union local, as a member of the Farmers Union Oil Company in Rita, and part of the community committee for the AAA, or known as the ASCS. John Nessie and Ingeborg Rasmussen were married in 1910, and in 1929, tragedy struck the Momry church community, and when 4 members of the Nessie family developed spinal meningitis. And it really put the fear into everyone because they were afraid of an epidemic, and so they did not have a funeral. They were buried at Momry in December of that year, but no funeral services were held until the next summer in 1930. My dad told me the story, and I don't know if it's true or not, but the story that he told me was that Mrs. Nessie was home with the 3 kids, and she, I don't know if she shot a jackrabbit or she captured it, but she cooked it up into a stew. And then her and the 3 kids ate it. And it created an infection, and that's what killed them and stuff, whether it's true or not, but it's a tragedy. And then there was 2 other sons, and one of the sons became a minister, I think Edgar. At the Momry Cemetery, there is also Martha Stadheim, and her husband was Hans Stadheim, and they were from Norway. And anyway, they came to Adams County in 1910 to homestead. And Hans was a farmer rancher. He worked hard with his wife right at his side. And they raised 6 children. And one of their sons was Orville Stadheim, which Orville was on the home place. I believe Luke is now on the home place, but that's the original homestead. I don't know anything about the Draugers or the Marslow. The first person buried at Momry was Johanna Katharina Johnsdotter, and Strand. So,
Oh, pretty. Oh, we have to see that.
oh, and the last person, there was a person just buried at Monry this past June, a Lauren Sabi. So it's still actively accepting residents. Where are you?
I think this is our last church.
It squeals for me.
It's really for everybody.
Let's just put this on there. Do test.
All right, testing, yeah. My connection to Emmanuel Norwegian Lutheran Church is that my grandparents, Sam and Jorn Skogen, are buried in that cemetery. Sam and Jorn, that's a picture of Sam and Jorn and their 8 children. They left Norway with all 8 kids in 1903 and came to Ada, Minnesota, as they had family members or relatives that had previously come and settled in Ada. From Ada, they spent a short time in Enderlin, North Dakota. And after leaving Enderlin, they got on the immigrant train with all the 2 oldest kids, John in the middle on the top and Serena Norby on the left. A lot of you remember Serena. The one on the right is my grandmother Helmina Klonbig. And accompanying them on the trip to Gladstone, is where they got off the train, was Sam's brother Joe Skogen. He was father to Henry and Milton and Edwin and Clifford. You all remember them. But Joe came by himself because he wanted to build a homestead shack before he went back and got his family. And also accompanying them were the Daniel Fugelsteins. Helga Fugelstein was a sister to Sam and Joe Skogen. So those 3 families came at the same time. They homesteaded adjoining quarters of land north of Hettinger on what is now the Cemetery Road. So the Fugelsteins, they homesteaded the quarter that more recently became the Rosencrantz place. And then the quarter to the south of that was my grandpa and grandma's, Sam and Jorn Skogen. You can still see the little indentation right across from Emma Melling where their homestead shack sat. And then Joe Skogen homesteaded the quarter immediately west of Sam and Jorn. So they were all very active in the church. Prior to the church being built, the Ellefson School, Mr. Ellefson was very much in favor of schools and church and whatever. So the Ellefson School was actually built in 1908, and that's where services were held until this church was built in 1923. So the Ellefson School sat just to the west of Hans Eriksson, and later on his son Harley bought that place. So Hans's sons were like Harley, Monroe Eriksson, Hubert Eriksson, and a lot of you know those people. And then directly north of the quarter that Hans Eriksson homesteaded was the Ellefsons. Again, a big family. And so the church services were held then in the Ellefson School for many years up until the church was built. And from my grandfather's homestead, it was probably like an 8-mile trip. You know, the Fugelsteins and both Skogens all attended services at the Ellefson School. So this is a list. I can't remember if I found this in my Grandma Quanbig's material or where I got it, but anyway, when the church was built in 1923, they asked the members, you know, to pledge so much from September of 23 to September of 24. So there you go. The most anyone could give was like $20, and somebody marked it paid when it was paid. You could pay any time during that year. and all the way down to $3, $5. So those are some of the people that homesteaded in the area. You know, the Larsons, the Ellefsons, the Scarvilles, that would be Elvin Scarville's dad. The Fossons, you might remember Fossons, the Torgerson brothers. Their dad, A.C. Thompson, that was the dad to Ardmore Thompson, grandpa to Billy. And the other certificate way on the right, I just found that. In 1925, Emmanuel Lutheran became incorporated in the state of North Dakota. And my great-granddad, Sam Scogan, was on one of the names on that certificate, along with Henry Sorrell. So buried in that cemetery, there's several Sorrells. I think there's 4 of them in total. So they filed their claim in Argonne Township, just across from Holt Township. And they were just very near to the Highland Prairie Cemetery. So on the bus, we'll go by the quarter where the Sorrell homestead was at. We'll see that today for those of you that want to take that tour. Now next, so the Sorrells, and then the Bensons, Benedict Benson, that would be Dennis Benson's great-grandparents. They were the original homestead. They homesteaded also in Argonne Township, and they would be like a couple miles east of where Herman Thorson homesteaded. And we'll come along that road today too, if you're on the bus. And then his brother Olaf is also buried there, and his wife. And Olaf was on the quarter just east of the Thorsons, and I think we'll be able to see that farmstead also from the main road. And the Ellefsons, there are many Ellefsons buried there. And the Gilbertsons are not familiar. And these are the stained glass windows. And very thankful that Ardmore Thompson, who would have gone to Sunday school there, and Ronnie Quayle salvaged those 3 stained glass windows. And they're in the southeast corner here in Building 1. If you go out and you see those lighted stained glass windows, they came out of that church before there was a chance for them to get broke, which happened in most. I think they boarded up the windows in 1946. And those are the 2 ice cream churns that came out of the church. One's a 5-gallon, one's a 3-gallon. I can't imagine cranking on that 5-gallon one.
Oh, no.
But,
you don't have a wrist.
Have strong
so
arms.
we did salvage some of those. So. Oh, and then Sam Scogan, he passed in 1934 at age 70, and Joran passed in 1944 at age 83. So 10 years apart on their deaths. So again, the lady on the top on the right, that's my grandma Helmina Quanby. That's my mom's mother. And Serena Norby, they had actually 13 kids. Two infants passed early on, but at one time during World War II, Serena had 4 sons in World War II overseas at the same time. And then the younger sons, I think at least 2 or more were in the Korean War then. So, but they all made it home safely. Thanks to her prayers, I'm sure.
Okay, our last couple slides will wrap up this program. So this presentation, Gone But Not Forgotten, honors the lives of those that walked in this area, and they laughed, and they celebrated, they hunted, they cooked, they farmed, they delivered babies, they cried, and they suffered. But we'd like to close this program with a painting that was exhibited by Sylvia Weishauer a few months, maybe sometime this summer. And the title of it is Mourning. and it is to honor those that were left behind. And I added this quote: "A cemetery is a marker of the love that stays when the soul moves onward." And I talked to Sylvia about this this painting, and she says that the viewer's eyes start right here, and they view this morning scene with a beautiful house in the distance, and it's kind of numinous and cloudy and like heavenly. And then we come around and we see the cemetery here, sort of like the circle of life. And here we see a guy with his head bowed down, mourning. So this is to acknowledge the universal experience that we all have of loss. But this slideshow is also a testament to the strength that our ancestors found to rise up. We see so much loss. So we'll end with this, and one more picture. Thank you for coming. This is another image of heaven that we saw, with the streets of gold and the gates, and who knows what's after that. All right, if you would like to go on the bus tour, there's a sign-up sheet. We have cookies and water, nothing fancy today, but we're glad you came, and I hope this inspired you.